Good morning. It is Thursday, the 20th of January. We continue the exciting saga from the book of Genesis, chapter 11, verses 1 to 9 this morning. And I hope you find Genesis as exciting as I do. What excites me is just this underlying history and anthropology and even archaeology of where we as a human species have come from. It's not an anthropological or archaeological textbook, so we have to read it with a degree of wisdom and openness. But we're not going to get into all of that debate now. We also have to read it with a degree of faith and to read and accept, sometimes quite literally, what is written. And there's a big debate in how far you can read it and interpret it literally, and how far you need to read it and interpret it in some other form. But either way, we see the descendants of Noah who have now spread across the earth to a large degree, and either all of them together, because remember we're talking about one family group, were they the entire representation of all humans on earth, or were they one particular family? Again, a moot point. But they have gathered in the plains or in the area of Mesopotamia as we would know it, and probably in the area of what we would later call the city of Babylon. And there, again, you see this distinction between those who acknowledge God and those who do not acknowledge God. And there's a sense in which here we can understand that those acknowledging God understand that earth was created by God, and God would live in the heavens, way above the earth or separate from the earth. And heaven, God, may come to earth because he or she, God, created earth, but earth may not go to heaven. That would be the faith and the understanding that heaven was reserved for God. And yet those who were ungodly in their approach decided to usurp this distinction. And so we are told in the story that they build what we would call a ziggurat, a tall tower with a square base and getting ever smaller in diminishing steps towards some peak. And this tower would be built as high as was humanly possible at the time. It obviously did not go right up into the ionosphere, right up towards where heaven may well have been, but it was built and it was tall. And obviously, when God came down and saw what humankind was doing, because they were working together, they shared a common language. Perhaps we can add into that the adjective, they shared a common vision and purpose, talking here, I believe, those who were not faithful to God, who tried to say, as humans, we can go to heaven. It's unfair that heaven can come to earth and we can't go to heaven, so we're going to go to heaven. And in this instance, they build this tower or ziggurat, and then God comes and says, if this is what they can achieve with a common language, a common vision, then I'm going to bring about some confusion. And the word Babel, which may well be the root of the word Babylon, but Babel means confusion. It also talks about babbling, different tongues, because in Scripture, part of that confusion was brought about by suddenly causing people to develop different language groups and to spread across the world. So a very interesting story about the anthropological origins of all the different races on the earth. But remember to interpret it perhaps not to be totally and utterly literal in our interpretation. But that's a debate for another day. So the bottom line again is those who decide that they know better than God, and those of us who know God and have faith would understand just how arrogant that is. But those who do not know God may well see this as being the logical conclusion of working to a common vision with a common purpose, helped by perhaps a common language of the day. And they would try and usurp, they would try and enter heaven or decide for themselves what their future would be. Is it any wonder, therefore, that God comes and says, but that's not true, that's not right, you have no purpose to do that. I will decide, if ever, when earth and heaven can once again be united. And what is interesting, of course, is that God does do that, I believe, in the New Testament. God comes to earth again, just as God came to earth and walked with Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve never went to heaven to talk to God. God came to them. And those with faith understood that distinction. In the New Testament, the beginning of Jesus, God comes to earth, now limited in that particular form to a human body. We call it the Son of God, Jesus Christ, but he's fully God, and God is still fully in heaven. And then again, in the book of Revelation, God finally, ultimately merges earth and heaven together. But it's done in his time and in his way, and it's with the absence of evil. And here, with the Tower of Babel, it's humankind with their evil intention deciding that they will short-circuit and shortcut history. So an interesting thought to dwell on. But again, to end, where are you in your relationship with God? Do you accept that God is in control? And you may not understand everything that God intends, but in faith, you accept that God is in control. You accept that we have a limitation as human beings, that we cannot go to the presence of God. We need him to come to us. Or do you think, like those who organized this Tower of Babel, the ziggurat, that they could tell God and meet God on their terms, and God would have to sit down and listen to them? And again, I wonder sometimes, and I must finish with this, a slightly radical thought, those Christians who believe that they can command God, and they call it faith, and they have, in a sense, faith as a power. They have faith in faith, and they will demand of God, because they see themselves as being gods, whether this is not a form of arrogance and us trying to get into heaven because of who we are. So let us know our place. It's not a nice way of putting it, and for the modern world, that's not something that sits comfortably with us, but it sits comfortably with me. I am a human created in the image of God, but I'm not a God, and I need to wait for God to come to me. And I have faith that one day I will have the right and permission to enter into the presence of God because of what he does for me. But I don't yet have that right, and I'll wait for God in faith and in patience. Are you waiting for God in faith and patience, or do you think that you can do it your way, at your time, in your time, and on your terms? How do you believe and feel about this? Folks, have a wonderful day. We'll chat again tomorrow. God bless.